the hit that took down a Limpopo businessman in Midrand. It was a normal Tuesday morning in January 2020 when the streets of Midrand bustled with commuters, unaware of the violence that was about to unfold. At approximately 10 a.m., a series of gunshots rang out at the intersection near New Road, shocking drivers and pedestrians. A white VW Golf 7 GDI was riddled with bullets, its driver slumped over the steering wheel. Within minutes, emergency responders and police arrived on the scene. Inside the car, they found the lifeless body of 67-year-old Hanyani Novella, a respected businessman from Limpopo. His name was known in Giani, where he owned several businesses: Hanyani Lodge and Conference Center, a funeral parlor, and a private security company. Many knew him as a self-made man who rose from humble beginnings to become a local success story. According to police reports, Novella had left his home in Pretoria earlier that morning. Investigators believe he was followed for over 40 kilometers before being ambushed at the traffic lights. Witnesses described a dark blue BMW X6 pulling up behind his vehicle, just as the light turned red. Without warning, gunmen jumped out and opened fire on Novella's car. The shots were precise and brutal, targeting him with deadly accuracy. While 3 other passengers in the car survived, Novella didn't stand a chance. His body was found slumped over, with multiple wounds to his chest and head. Blood covered the driver's seat, and shell casings littered the ground nearby. Police immediately suspected a targeted assassination. The question wasn't whether it was a hit, it was who ordered it and why. To understand why anyone would want to kill Hanyani Novella, you must first understand who he was. Born and raised in Batlo, Giani, Novella spent the early part of his life as a police officer. From 1990 until 2001, he wore the uniform with pride and was known as a disciplined officer with strong ties to his community. After leaving the police force, he served as head of security for the well-known soccer team Jomo Cosmos from 2002 to 2004. It was during this time that he began expanding his business interests, using his law enforcement background to start a security company. From there, he grew his brand, opening a funeral parlor and a lodge that catered to local tourists and business travelers. By 2020, Novella was not just a businessman. He was a power figure in Limpopo, with money, influence, and a long list of clients. But with power comes enemies, and Novella's rise didn't go unnoticed. His family described him as cautious, even paranoid in his final months. According to his cousin, one Malyalik, Novella had become increasingly private about his movements. He rarely traveled alone and always chose his routes carefully. Despite that, his killers managed to track him, follow him for miles, and strike with brutal efficiency. The family was devastated by the loss and overwhelmed with questions. Who would go to such lengths to murder a 67-year-old man in broad daylight? Was it business rivalry, revenge, or something deeper? "We saw his body at the mortuary," Malyalik said. "There were countless bullet wounds. It was clear they wanted him dead." For the family, closure remained a distant hope. For the police, the case was just beginning. When police returned to the crime scene later that afternoon, they noticed something important. Almost every building nearby had security cameras. The intersection was surrounded by luxury car dealerships and commercial buildings, most equipped with high-definition surveillance. Officers immediately requested footage from several locations, hoping to track the movements of the suspect's blue BMW X6. It was a race against time. The longer it took to identify the vehicle, the greater the chance the killers would vanish without a trace. Detectives also interviewed eyewitnesses, one of whom claimed to have seen the BMW tailing Novella's car for several kilometers. "It didn't look like a random car," the witness said. "It was like they were waiting for the right moment." Midrand police spokesperson Madom Tlamala confirmed that the case was being treated as a hit. However, no arrests were made in the first 48 hours. Forensic teams combed through Novella's car for fingerprints and ballistic evidence. The surviving passengers, still in shock, were questioned but claimed they hadn't noticed anything suspicious until the moment the shots were fired. Meanwhile, pressure mounted from the public and media. People demanded answers. How could such a high-profile killing happen in broad daylight, at one of the city's busiest intersections? News of the assassination spread quickly across South Africa, with headlines calling it a mob-style hit. Theories spread on social media. Some claimed it was a business fallout, others whispered about past enemies from his days in law enforcement. As detectives pored over hours of CCTV footage, a clearer picture started to emerge. The BMW had no plates, tinted windows, and moved with eerie precision. The killers were pros, and someone somewhere had paid them well. Back in Limpopo, the news of Hanyani Novella's death sent shockwaves through the community of Giani. People who knew him were stunned that a man of his stature could be gunned down so violently. Residents gathered outside Hanyani Lodge in silence, lighting candles and placing flowers at the entrance. Many refused to believe he was gone. "He gave back to this community," said one neighbor. He created jobs, mentored young people, and took care of his workers. His employees were heartbroken. Several of them had worked for him for over a decade, and they described him as tough but generous. But along with the sorrow came fear. Rumors spread quickly about who might have wanted him dead. Some whispered about a fallout with former business partners, while others suggested jealousy over his wealth. His cousin, one Malyalik, said the family had no clear suspects but admitted that Novella's business dealings could have earned him powerful enemies. The funeral parlor he owned, for example, competed with several others in the area. His security company had contracts with government buildings and private businesses, which may have stirred resentment. Still, Malyalik insisted that Novella always tried to stay away from trouble. He believed in solving problems, not creating them, he said. But now, the family worried about their own safety. Calls from unknown numbers had started to come in, and some relatives were considering moving. What began as a personal loss was turning into a chilling mystery for the entire town. The man they called Boss Hanyani had been silenced, and no one knew who would be next. While digging deeper into Novella's history, investigators began revisiting his time in law enforcement. He had served as a policeman during a complex time in South African history, from 1990 to 2001, when crime was rampant and corruption widespread. It was possible that enemies made back then hadn't forgotten him. Former colleagues described him as bold, a man who didn't tolerate corruption. One officer recalled a time Novella reported a fellow policeman involved in extortion. He didn't care who you were. If you crossed the line, he'd come for you, the officer said. That kind of integrity earned him respect, but also made him dangerous in the eyes of those who had something to hide. When he left the police force to work with Jomo Cosmos, he didn't slow down. Instead, he used his experience to secure players, manage logistics, and even provide protection during high-stakes games. According to a former club employee, Novella once broke up a planned robbery involving betting syndicates trying to influence a match. Though he left that world behind years ago, those events may have planted seeds for future revenge. Detectives working the case began looking at his old police records and previous investigations he had been involved in. They knew the answers might lie in his past just as much as his present. As the days passed and no arrests were made, frustration grew. Every new lead opened a dozen more questions. Was this a grudge that had taken years to come to light? Or was someone trying to erase him for something he knew? What if his life's greatest strength, his fearlessness, had finally led him to a fatal end? A week after the killing, detectives noticed a disturbing pattern. Hanyani Novella's murder wasn't the first time a high-profile businessman had been ambushed in Midrand. Over the past 2 years, at least 4 other business owners had been attacked in similar fashion. Shot while driving, at intersections, with attackers disappearing without a trace. While those cases had received media attention, none were ever solved. Now, investigators began to wonder, was this a string of coordinated hits? Could a professional assassination ring be operating in Gauteng, targeting businessmen for money, revenge, or control? The similarities were hard to ignore. All victims were men over 50. All owned multiple businesses. And in each case, no valuables were taken, only lives. As more footage came in from the new road crime scene, analysts noticed that the BMW X6 had also appeared near another businessman's office a month prior. That businessman had survived a break-in, but never reported the vehicle as suspicious. Police now believe the killers may have been watching Novella for days, even weeks. The operation was too clean, too well-planned to be random. Surveillance footage revealed that the BMW arrived at the intersection exactly 45 seconds after Novella's car stopped. That timing suggested coordination, not coincidence. Still, no plates, no fingerprints, no faces. The killers remained ghosts. One officer said, "It's like they vanished into the air. These guys are pros." Forensic experts reviewed the shell casings, confirming that the weapon used was a high-powered rifle often linked to gangland hits. Fear was growing across Johannesburg's business community. If someone like Novella could be killed in broad daylight, who was really safe? On a hot Saturday morning in Giani, hundreds gathered to say goodbye to Hanyani Novella. Mourners filled every seat at the local stadium, while others stood along the fences to pay their respects. The funeral was grand, a reflection of the man they had lost. Men in black suits and women dressed in matching church uniforms sang hymns under a white tent. His coffin was draped in white and gold, carried by uniformed men from his security company. The atmosphere was heavy with grief. Speakers took turns sharing stories of how Novella had changed lives and uplifted the community. A local pastor called his death a tragedy that has left a wound in Giani. But beneath the sorrow, there was tension. Security was tight, with police officers stationed at every corner of the venue. Some whispered that the killers could be watching. Others feared the funeral might be the next target. His cousin, one Malyalik, delivered a eulogy that brought many to tears. "You were our protector, our provider, our guide," he said. Now we are left with fear, unanswered questions, and pain. The family chose to bury him at his private lodge, a place he had built from nothing. As the coffin was lowered into the earth, loud sobs echoed through the valley. The ceremony ended, but the pain did not. For many, the funeral marked the end of a life, but also the beginning of a search for justice. No arrests had been made, and the community wanted answers. Who would kill a man who had given so much? 2 weeks after the funeral, frustration began to build within the investigation team. Leads had dried up, and every CCTV camera along New Road offered more mystery than answers. The BMW X6 that approached Novella's car at the intersection had no license plates. The driver's face was hidden by tinted windows and a hat. Police had hoped that someone in the area might have seen something, but no credible witnesses had come forward. A woman working at a nearby car dealership said she heard gunshots but was too afraid to look outside. "It all happened so fast," she said. "Just a few seconds, and it was over." The white Golf 7 GDI that Novella was driving had been shot more than 20 times. Ballistics experts confirmed that the weapons used were military-grade, possibly modified assault rifles. But with no fingerprints and no usable DNA, forensic progress was slow. Officers went door to door, interviewing residents and reviewing traffic footage from days before the killing. Nothing helped. Meanwhile, the 3 passengers who had been in Novella's car had gone silent. According to police sources, they were not injured but were too terrified to speak publicly. Investigators believed they might know more than they were saying. A detective close to the case told reporters, "Someone knows who did this. But fear is making people quiet." The silence was deafening, and the longer it lasted, the more likely the killers would get away. The case, which had once seemed so urgent, was beginning to cool, and the trail was slipping away. Digging into Novella's financial records, police discovered that not everything was as clean as it seemed. His businesses were successful, but there had been conflicts, quiet ones, behind the scenes. A recent court case had been filed against his funeral parlor over contract disputes. One former business partner, who asked not to be named, claimed they had argued over profit shares just months before the killing. He was powerful, but not everyone was happy working with him, the man said. Investigators began to wonder, was the hit about business gone wrong rather than gang activity? At the same time, police received a tip suggesting someone close to Novella may have betrayed him. The idea was chilling. Could a friend or family member have helped plan the murder? Records showed that Novella had recently moved large amounts of money from one of his accounts. When asked about it, family members claimed it was for a land deal in Mpumalanga, but police couldn't confirm the transaction. Adding to the suspicion, one of Novella's former employees had disappeared the day after the shooting. That man had worked at his security company and had access to his daily schedule. Though police issued a warrant for questioning, the man's phone was off, and he hadn't been seen since. The deeper police dug, the more tangled the web became. Friends became suspects. Partners became persons of interest. The case was no longer about a random act of violence. It was starting to look like betrayal from within. A detective working the case summarized it best. The bullets came from outside the car, but the information to set it up? That may have come from someone inside his life. Trust was turning into suspicion, and the family, still in mourning, now faced the haunting idea that someone they knew could be behind it all.